Imagine your approach to fitness right now.
Right.
Like, be completely honest with yourself for a second. Are you currently, panic prepping for a vacation?
Trying to shed that so-called winter coat?
Right, exactly. Trying to drop the winter coat before you hit the beach. Or are you actively building a body that is structurally designed to last you a lifetime?
It's a huge distinction.
It is. And today, we are taking a deep dive into why that whole seasonal cardio panic might actually be, well, accelerating your journey toward losing your physical independence as you age.
Yeah, and to really understand that shift, we're exploring two very distinct coaching resources today that focus specifically on fitness over the age of 50.
Right, which is such a crucial demographic to look at.
Absolutely. So first, we have the pragmatic, really no-nonsense coaching platform known as Fitness Realist. They focus heavily on sustainable daily habits, modifying routines for real life.
Yeah, very practical.
And second, we're looking at the deep evidence-based research compiled by John C. Harris in his book, Not Done Yet. That outlines his proud boomer wellness framework.
Okay, let's unpack this, because we are looking at a radical shift here. Moving away from those exhausting short-term aesthetic goals and really pivoting to functional longevity.
Which is what actually matters.
Right, and what stands out immediately to me is how these two very different coaching perspectives arrive at the exact same conclusion. I mean, one is focused on daily realism, the other on deep physiological research, but they totally align on what happens to our bodies over 50.
They really do.
Let's start with the standard fitness narrative, because Fitness Realist highlights this beautifully when they talk about that summer bodies wanted mindset.
Yeah, that platform points out that the whole fitness industry basically thrives on cyclical panic.
Oh, 100%.
The weather gets warm, and suddenly people are putting in these agonizing hours of sweat on the treadmill, just trying to strip off fat for, perfect aesthetic.
But the coaches at Fitness Realist argue we need to stop that. We need to stop treating fitness as a temporary intervention and actually start training to enjoy our daily activities.
Which brings us to the real stakes of this deep dive. Because Harris, in his book Not Done Yet, he takes this critique of the summer body cardio panic much further.
Yeah, he does. He argues that the real biological enemy isn't a few extra pounds of winter fat. The actual threat is sarcopenia.
Sarcopenia, right. Age-related muscle loss. And Harris provides some really sobering statistics on this. According to the research he cites, between the ages of 65 and 80, you can lose up to 8% of your muscle mass per decade.
8%? That's massive.
It is. And after 80, that rate accelerates even further.
So what does that 8% actually look like in daily life? Because, we throw around percentages all the time, but what is the actual functional loss for you listening right now?
Well, it's the difference between catching yourself when you trip on a rug versus falling and shattering a hip.
Wow. Yeah, that's real.
Harris points out that we spend so much time worrying about cardiovascular health or cognitive decline, but sarcopenia is actually one of the primary drivers of nursing home placement.
Because you lose your independence.
Exactly. The inability to function independently, just getting off a toilet or getting up from a chair that is driven by this silent, progressive loss of muscle tissue.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because he has this memorable analogy in his writings where he says, Pixar saw it coming.
Oh, the Wall-E comparison.
Right. He compares modern aging to the humans in that movie Wall-E.
Yeah.
Ones who just, float around on hover chairs, completely losing their physical capacity.
It's a striking image.
And he does acknowledge the hormonal side of aging, right? Like the natural decline in testosterone, estrogen, growth hormone. But he argues that a massive portion of what we call inevitable aging is actually just the downstream effect of a sedentary lifestyle.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is that the hormonal shifts absolutely change the biological conditions, but Harris contends they are not a definitive death sentence for your muscle tissue. Being sedentary at 50 doesn't mean you're just standing still in time. It means you are actively on a downward slope. The body is incredibly efficient. If it realizes you aren't using that really expensive muscle tissue to lift things, it's going to break it down to save energy.
So obsessing over a summer body via endless hours of cardio while completely ignoring that muscle loss, it's like putting a freight coat of paint on a house with a crumbling foundation.
That's the perfect way to look at it.
It might look a little better from the curb for a minute, but the structure itself is quietly collapsing.
And according to Harris, the fitness industry actually enables that structural collapse by selling cardio as this ultimate all-in-one solution. Now, to be clear, Both of our sources acknowledge cardiovascular fitness is crucial.
Oh, for sure.
Low-intensity Zone 2 cardio is incredible for your health.
Okay, let's pause right there, because Zone 2 is one of those terms that gets thrown around a lot right now.
Uh,
When Harris talks about Zone 2 cardio, what does that actually feel like? Are we talking about a light stroll or a full sprint?
Neither, really. Zone 2 is typically described as a conversational pace. You're working hard enough that you are breathing heavily, but you could still maintain a conversation with someone next to you.
Okay, so you wouldn't want to sing a song, but you can speak in full sentences.
Exactly. Mechanically, this specific intensity is fantastic for your mitochondrial health, those power plants of your cells, and for your metabolic function. Harris makes it clear that this kind of cardio is not optional for long-term health.
And this is the massive trap he identifies. Zone 2 cardio does not provide the mechanical tension required to hold onto your muscle mass.
Right, it doesn't.
It protects your heart, sure, but it does absolutely nothing to stop that sarcopenia slope.
That is the critical distinction. It cannot preserve the foundational beams of the house, as you put it, which is why both of our sources pivot to the exact same shared prescription.
Fitness Realist states it bluntly. Their programming philosophy is literally more weights, less cardio.
Resistance training, combined with adequate nutritional fuel, is presented as the only reliable antidote here.
Let's break down the mechanics of that resistance training, because Harris provides a really fascinating blueprint for what actually happens when an older adult starts lifting weights. Say you're listening to this and you decide to start lifting tomorrow. What is physically happening in those first few weeks?
Well, a lot of people quit early because they don't see visibly larger muscles after a month.
Right, they get frustrated.
But Harris explains that your early strength gains, like weeks 1 through 8, are almost entirely neurological.
Really?
Neurological. Yeah. Your body is not building massive amounts of new muscle tissue right out of the gate. Instead, your nervous system is basically learning how to recruit and fire the muscle fibers you already possess much more efficiently.
So it's essentially a software upgrade. Your brain is figuring out how to send a stronger, more coordinated electrical signal to the muscle.
Exactly. But that creates a really dangerous illusion for a new lifter. Because your nervous system adapts so quickly, you feel significantly stronger, so you naturally start lifting much heavier weights.
And Harris attaches a huge warning label to this phase regarding your connective tissue, doesn't he?
He does, and this is a vital mechanism to understand. If you look at a muscle, it is a highly vascular tissue. It's packed with blood vessels, meaning it gets a constant, rich delivery of nutrients and oxygen.
Right, it heals quickly.
But tendons and ligaments have very poor blood supply. Because of that lack of vascularity, Harris points out that connective tissue adapts and strengthens at roughly half the speed of muscle tissue.
Ah, okay. So it's like dropping a 500 horsepower Ferrari engine into a cheap, rusted-out sedan frame.
That's a great analogy.
The engine, which is your newly coordinated muscle, wants to rip down the highway and lift that heavy dumbbell. But the axle, your tendon, just snaps under the torque because it hasn't caught up yet.
That is the exact mechanism behind why older lifters are so prone to overuse injuries. The muscle belly is ready to handle the heavy load, but the tendon attaching it to the bone is not.
So you have to pace yourself.
Absolutely. Progressive overload isn't just a strategy for getting bigger muscles. It is a strict injury prevention protocol. You have to intentionally pace your weight progression so your slower connective tissues have the time to remodel.
Which brings us to the raw materials required for all this tissue remodeling, the diet. And the nutrition space right now is just, well, it's a battlefield of competing ideologies. Keto, paleo, Mediterranean, low-fat. It is exhausting.
It really is.
But Harris analyzes these diet wars and basically categorizes them as noise.
Yeah, he argues that the specific dietary ideology matters far less than we think. To explain why they all seem to work for people initially, he points to something called the Hawthorne effect.
The Hawthorne effect. Okay, that's the psychological phenomenon where people change their behavior simply because they know they're being observed, right?
Yes. Or, in the case of a diet, because they are finally paying strict attention to their daily intake. Harris argues that almost all named diets work in the short term because of two factors.
Okay, what are they?
First, the Hawthorne effect causes you to subconsciously make better choices. Like, you skip the donut because you know you have to log it in an app.
Right, the accountability.
And second, pretty much every branded diet, whether it's paleo or vegan or whatever, requires the elimination of ultra-processed foods.
So when you stop eating highly processed junk and start paying attention, you lose weight and your metabolic markers improve, regardless of whether your calories are coming from fats or carbohydrates.
Exactly. According to the research Harris compiled, there are really only two metrics that dictate body recomposition, meaning the ability to lose fat while maintaining or building muscle,
And those are.
total calories and total protein. Everything else is secondary. And for older adults, the protein requirement is significantly higher than standard government recommendations suggest.
This introduces a concept from the deep dive that was a huge revelation for me: anabolic resistance. As we age, our muscles become incredibly stubborn. They actively resist the biological signal to grow or even just maintain their current size.
It's a hallmark of the aging process. The muscle tissue literally becomes less sensitive to the amino acids circulating in your blood.
I picture it like a rusted lock on a heavy door.
Yeah.
When you're 20 years old, a tiny key, say 20 grams of protein from a small meal, slides right in and easily turns the lock to trigger muscle growth.
Yeah, it's effortless.
But at 60, the internal gears of that lock are stiff and rusted. You need a much heavier, larger key just to force the mechanism to turn.
And that larger key, Harris specifies, is a dose of 30 to 40 grams of high-quality protein in a single sitting.
30 to 40 grams per meal.
Per meal. The primary driver here is a specific amino acid called leucine. You can think of leucine as the literal starter button for a biological pathway called mTOR.
Okay, mTOR. What does that do?
It acts like the general contractor on a building site. It tells the body to start assembling new muscle tissue. Without enough leucine in one sitting to overcome that anabolic resistance, the contractor just never shows up to work.
Okay, wait a second. I need to stop you there, because we really need to address the elephant in the room regarding protein. My own doctor has explicitly warned me to watch my protein intake as I get older to protect my kidneys.
A lot of doctors do.
We hear this rumor constantly. Is Harris arguing that standard medical advice is wrong?
He addresses this exact concern head-on in his book. According to the clinical literature Harris reviews, this widespread fear is based on a massive misinterpretation of medical data.
Really? How so?
When someone has pre-existing diagnosed kidney disease, their damaged kidneys struggle to filter the byproducts of protein metabolism. For those specific patients, lowering protein is absolutely standard medical care.
Right, because the organ is already compromised.
But Harris points out that the literature demonstrates high protein intake does not cause damage to healthy kidneys. Assuming the organ is healthy, it is perfectly capable of handling higher filtration rates.
Oh, wow.
The concern is completely unsupported by evidence for the general healthy population. Harris recommends older adults aim for a daily total of 1.6 to 2.0 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, just to support that muscle mass.
And if we look at the mechanics of fat loss, hitting that protein target becomes even more urgent. I mean, if you're trying to lose weight by eating in a caloric deficit, preserving muscle is biochemically impossible without that high protein intake combined with the resistance training.
It's impossible.
If you just starve yourself and do endless cardio, you aren't just losing body fat, you are actively cannibalizing your own muscle tissue for energy.
Which ultimately lowers your resting metabolic rate, setting you up for the exact rapid weight regain we see in chronic dieters. You end up smaller, weaker, and burning fewer calories at rest.
So we have the biological formula clearly laid out by our sources. Lift weights, pace yourself so your tendons can adapt, and eat 30 to 40 grams of protein per meal to overcome anabolic resistance.
Sounds simple enough.
Knowing the science is the easy part. Actually doing it consistently through the chaos of real life, I mean, that is where the whole thing falls apart for most of us.
Yeah, the psychology of longevity is where the application of the science truly matters. And Harris dedicates a significant portion of Not Done Yet to this. He argues that willpower is a fundamentally terrible foundation for any fitness practice.
Because willpower is a depleting resource.
Exactly.
It's based on a psychological concept called ego depletion. Your willpower fluctuates based on how well you slept, how stressed you are about a project at work, or, whether your blood sugar just dropped.
Yeah, it's never stable.
Relying on willpower to get you to the gym means you are asking a finite battery to constantly fight against decades of entrenched sedentary behavior.
And when that battery inevitably runs out, people feel like moral failures, they internalize it. Society constantly tells us that it takes 21 days to form a habit.
Oh, we've all heard that one.
Right. So when you're struggling immensely at week 3, you think, well, I guess I'm just not disciplined enough. I'm not cut out for this.
But the science on habit formation tells a completely different story.
It really does. Harris points out that the 21-day myth actually originated from a 1960s book by a plastic surgeon. He noticed it took his patients about 3 weeks to get used to their new faces.
Wait, seriously? That's where that comes from?
Yeah. It had absolutely no basis in the behavioral science of forming a new physical habit. The actual median time to form an automatic habit, according to modern research, is 66 days.
66 days. So giving up at week 3 isn't a failure of character, as Harris calls it. It's just premature evaluation. Your brain literally hasn't thickened the neural pathways enough to make the behavior automatic yet.
No, it hasn't.
It's like trying to walk through a dense forest. The first 20 times are exhausting because you have to hack away the brush. But after 66 days, you've trampled down a clear, easy dirt path.
That's exactly it. Furthermore, Harris cites a really fascinating 2024 review in the Health Psychology Review that completely flips the script on aging and habits.
How way?
We often assume that older people are hopelessly stuck in their ways, right? But the research suggests older adults actually possess distinct advantages in habit formation compared to younger populations.
What kind of advantages?
Well, they generally have more stable daily routines, stronger emotional self-regulation, and a much greater biological capacity for delayed gratification.
Oh, that makes sense. They don't need the immediate dopamine hit of a visible six-pack in 2 weeks.
Exactly. They possess the patience required to build that 66-day pathway.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? If willpower is a failing strategy, what is the winning approach? Harris argues that the required psychological shift is an identity claim.
An identity claim.
Yeah, you have to stop saying, I'm trying to get in shape. That phrasing implies a temporary state of being. You have to start acting as someone who lifts.
I love that. And this concept integrates perfectly with the pragmatic advice from the Fitness Realist platform. They argue that if your identity is someone who lifts, a disruption like that summer vacation we talked about earlier, it doesn't ruin your progress.
You don't throw your hands up, abandon your diet, and declare the week ruined.
Because your identity isn't tied to a specific gym or a specific piece of equipment, Fitness Realist suggests that if you are on vacation, you simply modify.
You swap your heavy barbell session for a 15-minute resistance band circuit in the hotel room, or you just do bodyweight squats on the beach. Specific workout programs get paused. Your core identity does not.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the people who change significantly in their 60s aren't outliers with unusual psychology. They're simply people who decided their narrative was negotiable.
Willpower is like your phone's battery. It drains as the day goes on.
Yeah.
But building an identity is like being plugged directly into the wall. The power source is constant, not because you're trying hard, but because it's simply who you are.
And they apply structural supports to protect that identity. Harris advocates for the rule of never missing twice in a row.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, if you miss a Tuesday workout because a family emergency happens, your entire psychological focus shifts to ensuring you do not miss Thursday. You build a framework that expects life to interrupt you.
It's about treating yourself with grace when life happens, but following it up with fierce accountability, which really brings all these physical and psychological threads together. Let's look at the ultimate stakes of everything these sources are trying to communicate. Because 10 years down the road, the divergence between the person who adopts this identity and the person who relies on seasonal cardio panics is staggering.
In measurable clinical terms, bone mineral density, lean muscle mass, metabolic health, it is the difference between occupying two completely separate biological realities.
It's the divergence between being an independent, active participant in your own life versus slowly becoming a patient who has to be medically managed through their final decades.
And it isn't just about you, it's about the people who depend on you.
Right. Think about the mechanical difference between a grandparent who can confidently get down on the living room floor to play with a toddler and then stand right back up without needing to, pull themselves up on a coffee table.
Versus a grandparent who is functionally trapped in a chair.
Exactly. That physical capacity dictates the depth and type of presence you are able to have in the lives of the people you love most.
Functional independence is the baseline goal of the Proud Boomer Wellness Framework. But Harris leaves his readers with a final provocative concept in Not Done Yet that pushes far beyond just surviving aging.
He talks about what happens on the other side of baseline health.
Precisely, because something fascinating occurs when an older adult actually hits their clinical health goals. The person who starts lifting weights at 60 purely to fix a bone density scan might find at 65 that their medical goals are completely met.
The rusted lock is turning. The tendon is adapted. So what happens then?
For many of these individuals, the objective naturally shifts from mere health to actual athletic performance. Harris dedicates a whole section of his book to people who end up competing in natural masters bodybuilding divisions at age 65, 70, or beyond.
Wait, really? Bodybuilding at 70?
Yeah. These are people who came to fitness with zero athletic background, purely out of medical necessity. And they end up stepping onto a stage to display what disciplined, science-backed training can produce.
It forces us to completely reframe the idea of a plateau. When your progress stalls in the gym, the sources suggest it is not a failure. It is a period of physical consolidation.
Your connective tissues are finally catching up, your nervous system is equilibrating, and once that foundation is solidified, your older body is suddenly capable of chasing entirely new goals.
So when your body is finally capable, what new goals will you chase? Think back to that vacation you might be prepping for. Are you going to just try to survive the summer with temporary cardio? Or are you going to use these 66 days to build the foundational pathway for the next 3 decades? As Harris writes near the end of his book, your biology is not against you. The window is open.
The human body is remarkably adaptive. The muscle tissue doesn't have a chronological cutoff date where it refuses to grow. It is simply waiting for the right mechanical tension and the right dose of leucine to receive the signal.
The blueprint from our sources is clear. Skip the panic cardio. Rebuild the beams with resistance training. Give your tendons time to catch up. Turn the rusted lock with enough protein. Because whether you are 50, 60, or 75, you are building a structure meant to last. And it all starts with realizing that a crumbling foundation can always be rebuilt, stronger than it ever was before.